global energy crisis and the need to preserve the planet by accelerating the decarbonization of the energy sector and deployment of renewables. The countries reiterated their commitment to the Paris Agreement, keeping a limit of 1.5 degrees within reach. The G7 said that ensuring economic resilience and economic security globally remains the best protection against the weaponization of economic vulnerabilities. Joining us now to talk about the G7 outcomes, especially on the energy crisis and outlook for energy markets, is Mr. Fatih Birol, Executive Director of the International Energy Agency. Mr. Birol, thank you very much for joining us here. In October last year, you had said that the world is in its first and truly global energy crisis. What perspective did you give the G7 on the current state of the energy crisis and your outlook?
Thank you. I just returned this morning from Hiroshima, back to my work in Paris, back to my office in Paris. I can tell you that the G7 meeting this year, together with the leaders of the India, Prime Minister Modi was there, Brazil, President Lula was there, Joko Widodo of Indonesia, Australian Prime Minister, Korean President, and several other countries gave a rather homogeneous perspective as far as the energy and climate change is concerned. I told them in the last G7 meeting, it was in Elmau, in Germany last year, and Prime Minister Modi was, of course, there, that the global energy crisis has started. And I said, this may well be an additional driver for clean energy transitions. And this year, I told them that what we, International Energy Agency, has thought it could be possible is happening. Clean energy transitions are being turbocharged much faster than many think. I told them how solar, wind, electric cars, nuclear power, energy efficiency is exploding the growth around the world, and as such, they are becoming a real force in global energy markets. So we have discussed this, and the discussion among the world leaders, the leaders I mentioned to you, were rather, to my surprise, homogeneous, that all the countries were very keen to see clean energy transition is happening, and they want to take an important role in the global clean energy transition. For example, Prime Minister Modi, rightly so, mentioned the huge success story in India as far as the solar energy penetration is concerned. And President Lula of Brazil again supported our thesis in terms of the bioenergy, how strongly it is growing. And all the leaders have once again reaffirmed their commitment to international climate goals. And I think Japan made a very good move, that that very G7 meeting, to link it to the G20 presidency of India, which in my view was a very intelligent decision from the point of view of Prime Minister Kishida of Japan.
Right. Mr. Birol, you're speaking about the bridge between G7 and G20. What is the main message that you would like to be carried over from the G7 in Hiroshima to India during the G20 Leaders Summit in September?
There are two things, one a bit on the maybe seen micro level, one on the macro level. On the micro level, I mentioned that we are seeing the clean energy transition is happening very strongly. And again, solar, wind, nuclear, electric cars, and energy efficiency. And energy efficiency is very important, and many countries have improved their energy efficiency. And as I mentioned to the world leaders there in Hiroshima, if the world would, in addition to putting standards and norms for the cars, for the air conditioners, refrigerators, if they could empower the consumers as it was highlighted in the life mission of Prime Minister Modi, this would give very, very good results. So this was the first one I would like to see, as I said, micro level, which could be hopefully a transfer to G20 in India this year. And we are, as I mentioned, the Prime Minister Modi the day before yesterday, we are at the IEA coming up with a report showing the importance of a mission life and its impact to reduce emissions, to improve the economy and others. This is the first one. The second one, while everybody, all the world leaders agreed that we have to reach our international climate goals, I think, as I highlighted again in the meeting, for me, the fault line of reaching international climate goals is how we are going to finance. And on the macro level, the issue is for me that how we are going to finance clean energy transition in developing countries. I have highlighted this issue in Hiroshima. We have many challenges to reach our climate goals globally, in US, in Canada, Europe, Japan, in China. But for me, the fault line of the world will be or will not be able to reach its climate goals is whether or not we can have enough financing for clean energy for developing countries. For me, G20 president of India, a de facto leader of the global South, I hope will make this as an important point for G20 presidency, with hopefully with a successful outcome. So this is the major bridge I see between Hiroshima and the G20 presidency of India.
Right. Mr. Birol, where do things stand in the global energy crisis? Your expectation from the winter?
I think this winter, how we are going to see the oil markets will be depending on two important factors. How strongly Chinese economy will rebound. With the current expectations, we expect this year global oil demand will increase about slightly more than 2 million barrels per day, out of which 60% of it will come from China alone, which will put pressure on the markets, is 2 million barrels per day. And the second is how the producing countries will respond to that. Because if the producing countries continue with their current policies, we may well see a tightness in the second half of this year towards winter in the global oil markets.
Right. How do you expect the volatility in oil markets to be, Mr. Birol, this year?
I think we may see volatility in the markets because of the demand might be very strong, especially second half, if we see that not enough supply coming to markets. But I hope this volatility doesn't take place, because it is not good, especially for the developing countries who import a lot of oil and gas from the producing countries.
Impact of the global energy crisis on the clean energy transition. What should governments do to accelerate the clean energy transition, and your expectations from COP28?
So I expected the clean energy transition being turbocharged this year, and some of the clean energy options are moving better than the others. The best ones today we see is the solar, a huge growth in solar, and electric cars. Let me give you one example. 2 years ago, 1 out of 25 cars sold was electric, 1 out of 25. And this year, it will be 1 out of 5 cars sold will be an electric car, and it is skyrocketing around the world. So these are going very strongly, and we will see that the governments who make the right policies to support this clean energy transitions will not only help their economies by reducing the oil and gas imports from other countries, not only helping their environment and supporting the global action on climate change, but they will also make sure that their economies are being modernized, going from the old economy. So it's also economic issue. From COP28, I have many expectations, but if I can put two of them together, one is support from the advanced, rich countries and the international financial institutions for financial help for the developing countries' clean energy transition. This is one. And the second, strong commitments from oil and gas industry in order to show the world that they really is underlined, are interested to address climate change question. I am looking forward to see this commitment from the energy industry. So these are my two expectations, among others, for the COP28 in Dubai.
All right, Mr. Birol, thank you so much for joining us here on Newscentre, giving us your view on the outlook for energy and the outlook for energy transition as well. We're going to